Whispering woods. In the heart of a remote, dense forest, shrouded in unsettling legends, three friends embarked on a camping adventure that would test their beliefs and fears. Emma, a skeptical science student, always looked for logical explanations. Leo, an adventurous photographer, was in search of the perfect shot. Maya, a folklore enthusiast, was drawn to the mysterious tales that cloaked the forest. The first day passed without incident, filled with laughter and the crackling of the campfire. But as night descended, a chilling fog crept through the trees, casting eerie shadows. Emma joked about the fog being alive, but Maya's eyes widened with fear, recalling an old legend about a sentient mist that guarded the forest. They awoke to find an ancient artifact near their campsite, a weathered stone carving with symbols none of them could decipher. Leo, fascinated, snapped photos while Maya insisted it was a warning sign. Emma, ever the skeptic, brushed off their concerns. That night, the whispers started. Faint at first, like leaves rustling, then growing clearer, almost human. Emma tried to rationalize it as the wind, but Leo and Maya weren't convinced. Their unease deepened when they noticed shadowy figures lurking just beyond the reach of their campfire light. The figures seemed to mimic their movements, like dark mirrors. Fear gripped the trio as the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Maya remembered a tale about spirits in the woods that echoed the actions of the living, trapped in an eternal dance. Leo suggested they leave, but Emma, her skepticism faltering, wanted to uncover the truth. Their attempt to leave was thwarted by a thick fog that disoriented them, leading them in circles. The forest felt alive, hostile, as if it were playing a sinister game. The whispers swirled around them, words they couldn't quite understand, but the intent was clear: they were not welcome. In the heart of the night, with the moon obscured by mist, they found themselves pursued by an unseen entity. The forest echoed with the sound of their panicked breaths and the soft, mocking whispers of their pursuer. In a clearing, they stumbled upon an old journal, its pages yellowed with age. It belonged to a previous camper, long missing, filled with frantic notes about the haunted history of the forest. The journal spoke of a curse, a vengeful spirit that guarded the forest against intruders, exacting a toll on those who dared to ignore the legends. Emma, her scientific skepticism shattered, realized they were dealing with something beyond their understanding. As dawn approached, the pursuit ceased. The trio, exhausted and terrified, found their way back to their campsite. The fog lifted, revealing a path leading out of the forest. With one last look at the ancient artifact, they understood it was a boundary marker, a warning they had foolishly ignored. The whispering woods released them, but the experience left its mark. Emma, once a disbeliever, now questioned what she knew of the world. Leo, shaken, had photos no one would believe were real. Maya, her love for folklore deepened, carried the story of their encounter, a tale as haunting as any passed down through generations. Their escape from the forest was not just a physical one, it was a journey from disbelief to acknowledgement, a realization that some legends hold truths too eerie for the logical mind. The whispers of the woods, though silent now, would echo in their minds forever. The Forgotten Trail. Jack, an experienced camper, Sarah, a curious journalist, and Kyle, a local guide, set out on an expedition into an overgrown forest, famous for its unsettling quiet and stories that whispered of the unknown. The path they followed was barely visible, a trail long forgotten by time. As they ventured deeper, the forest seemed to close in around them, the trees like silent sentinels watching their every move. Sarah, ever the inquisitive soul, was there to uncover the story of a camper who had gone missing years ago, a camper who was her brother. The first sign that something was amiss was the campsite they stumbled upon. It lay abandoned, a scene frozen in time, with belongings scattered as if left in a hurry. Jack's experienced eyes scanned the area, noting the eerie stillness that hung in the air. Kyle, the local guide, whispered legends of the forest, tales that had been passed down through generations, adding a chilling backdrop to their discovery. As night fell, the trio set up camp near the abandoned site. Sarah discovered old journals among the scattered belongings, their pages filled with frantic entries of unexplained occurrences and fearsome shadows in the night. The words were etched with a terror that seemed to leap off the pages, gripping Sarah's heart with a cold dread. That night, ghostly apparitions appeared around the abandoned campsite. They were spectral figures of a former camping group, their faces twisted in silent screams, reliving their last moments over and over. The air was thick with a haunting melancholy, the echoes of a tragedy long past but never forgotten. Sarah, driven by a need to understand what happened to her brother, delved deeper into the journals. She discovered references to strange symbols found on trees, symbols that seemed to mark a path deeper into the heart of the forest. Jack and Kyle, though hesitant, agreed to follow the trail in the morning, their minds unsettled by the eerie occurrences. As they followed the symbols, the forest seemed to change around them. The trees appeared to lean in closer, the path narrowing, as if the forest itself was trying to confine them. Unexplained sounds haunted their journey, whispers in a language they couldn't understand, and soft footfalls that seemed to follow them, always just out of sight. The deeper they went, the more intense the feelings of despair and fear became. It was as if the forest was imbued with the emotions of those who had ventured there before them. Kyle, trying to maintain his composure as the guide, recalled stories of spirits that were said to inhabit the forest, lost souls trapped in an eternal twilight. Finally, they came upon a clearing, and in its center, an ancient tree, its trunk covered in the strange symbols. Beneath the tree lay a rusted locket, its chain broken. Sarah, with trembling hands, picked it up, recognizing it immediately as her brother's. As she opened it, a wave of sorrow washed over them, so palpable it was almost a physical force. That night, the true horror of the forest revealed itself. The ghostly apparitions returned, but this time they were more vivid, more desperate. They reenacted a scene, a group of campers, much like themselves, surrounded by a thick fog, their faces contorted in terror as they were seemingly consumed by the forest itself. The trio realized that the forest was reliving its past, trapping them in a cycle of tragedy and despair. They knew they had to leave, but the forest, alive with the memories of its victims, wouldn't let them go easily. The path back was obscured, the trees seemed to rearrange themselves, disorienting them, pulling them deeper into its haunted depths. In a moment of clarity, Sarah remembered the locket in her hand. Guided by an unexplained intuition, she placed it at the base of the ancient tree, whispering a farewell to her brother. As if a spell had been broken, the forest seemed to sigh, the oppressive atmosphere lifting, the path home clear once again. As they left the forest, the sun breaking through the canopy in a cascade of light, they didn't speak. The experience had bound them in a shared understanding that some places hold the memories of the past, replaying them for those who dare to uncover their secrets. The forgotten trail was a reminder of the lingering impact of past events, the intertwining of history and folklore. For Sarah, it was a journey of closure, of saying goodbye to a brother who had become one with the forest. For Jack and Kyle, it was a chilling affirmation that some legends are rooted in truths too profound to ignore. And for the forest, it was a release, a letting go of a story that had been held captive in its heart for far too long. Crimson Moon. In the heart of a dense forest, under the light of a full, crimson moon, three friends set up camp, unaware of the surreal experience that awaited them. Nina, an astrologer with a deep belief in celestial powers, was thrilled to witness the rare lunar phenomenon. Derek, a skeptic, always looking for a logical explanation, joined to prove there was nothing mystical about it. Elise, a nature lover, felt a profound connection to the forest and its unseen energies. As the moon rose, painting the forest in shades of deep red, the atmosphere began to shift. The once familiar trees cast strange, elongated shadows, and the air was charged with an electric, otherworldly energy. Nina's excitement was palpable as she set up her telescope, eager to study the moon's unusual hue. However, as the night progressed, the forest transformed into a landscape from a dream. Trees seemed to bend and sway rhythmically, though there was no wind. The sounds of the forest morphed into a symphony of unrecognizable tones, creating a feeling of disorientation among the campers. Derek, trying to rationalize the changes, argued it was just the moonlight playing tricks on their eyes. But Elise, wide-eyed, whispered about ancient legends that spoke of nights when the veil between worlds grew thin. She recounted tales of a mysterious old woman who had warned her of the forest's secrets, connected to the lunar cycle. The most unsettling event occurred when they encountered creatures that defied explanation. Ethereal beings, shimmering under the crimson moon, appeared around them. These creatures seemed curious yet distant, as if they were observers from another realm. Nina, filled with wonder, believed they were guardians of the forest, manifestations of the moon's magic. Derek, though unnerved, dismissed them as figments of their imagination, exacerbated by the eerie moonlight. Time seemed to distort around them. Moments stretched into eternity, and hours passed in the blink of an eye. Nina, consulting her astrological charts, realized that the alignment of the stars and the moon was creating a temporal anomaly. The forest, under the influence of the crimson moon, had become a place where the normal rules of time and space no longer applied. Elise, increasingly unsettled, experienced visions that blurred the line between reality and hallucination. She saw glimpses of the forest's past and future, images of joy and despair that had been absorbed by the ancient trees. These visions were so vivid that she could almost touch them, feel the emotions they carried. As the night reached its zenith, the surreal atmosphere intensified. The moon seemed to pulse, its crimson light growing brighter, casting the forest into a world that was both beautiful and terrifying. The ethereal creatures converged around a large oak tree, their forms glowing with an otherworldly light. Nina, caught up in the majesty of the moment, began to recite incantations from old astrological texts, believing she could communicate with the creatures. Derek, his skepticism faltering, couldn't deny the reality of what was unfolding before his eyes. He started to document the events, his need for understanding overcoming his fear. It was then that the mysterious old woman appeared, as if stepping out of the shadows. Her eyes held the wisdom of ages, and her voice, though frail, resonated with authority. She spoke of the crimson moon as a gateway, a time when the spirits of the forest awakened. Her words were cryptic, warning them that not all who wander under the moon's gaze return unchanged. As dawn approached, the crimson light waned, and the forest began to revert to its normal state. The ethereal creatures faded away, their presence lingering like a fading dream. The campers, exhausted and bewildered, packed up their gear, the night's events weighing heavily on their minds. Nina, her beliefs affirmed, felt a deeper connection to the cosmos. Derek, his skepticism challenged, pondered the mysteries of the universe that science couldn't explain. Elise, her love for nature deepened, carried with her the visions and the old woman's warnings. The experience under the crimson moon changed them in ways they couldn't fully comprehend. It was a reminder of the power of nature, the thin veil between reality and myth, and the mysteries that lay just beyond the reach of understanding. As they left the forest, the first rays of the sun filtering through the trees, they knew they would never forget the night they spent under the spell of the crimson moon. Echoes of the forest, deep in the heart of the woods, where the trees whispered secrets of the past, three friends embarked on a camping trip that would unravel the mysteries of a haunted lake. Alex, a thrill-seeker always chasing new adventures, was eager to explore the unknown. Rachel, a history buff, was drawn by the stories of the past that clung to the lake. Tom, a local fisherman, had grown up hearing tales of the lake's ghostly echoes. The lake, surrounded by dense forest, was said to be haunted by the spirits of a sunken village, lost to time and memory. As night fell, the trio sat around the campfire, the lake's still waters reflecting the flickering flames. The air was thick with a sense of anticipation, a feeling that something unseen was watching, waiting. It wasn't long before the strange occurrences began. Faint echoes of voices drifted across the lake, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. The voices were a mix of different languages, some ancient and unrecognizable. Rachel, her curiosity piqued, tried to document the voices, believing they were key to understanding the lake's history. As they explored the woods around the lake, they stumbled upon relics of the past, old, rusted tools and fragments of pottery, half buried in the earth. Tom, familiar with the local legends, spoke of a village that once stood where the lake now lay. The village had vanished overnight, swallowed by the waters in a tragic event long forgotten. The most chilling event occurred when Alex, driven by his adventurous spirit, decided to venture closer to the lake at night. He disappeared without a trace, leaving only footprints leading to the water's edge. Rachel and Tom, frantic with worry, searched the woods, calling out for their friend. Hours later, as dawn broke, Alex reappeared, dazed and confused. He had no memory of where he had been or what had happened during the lost hours. His eyes, wide with unspoken fear, hinted at unspeakable horrors he had encountered. The trio decided to delve deeper into the mystery, driven by a need to understand what had happened to Alex. They discovered the remnants of an old diary, its pages worn by time. The diary belonged to a villager, and it spoke of an ancient curse that had doomed the village to its watery grave. The deeper they dug into the history, the more the echoes of the past seemed to come alive. Ghostly figures appeared near the lake, spectral remnants of villagers from different eras, their faces etched with sorrow and loss. The figures seemed to be reenacting their final moments, trapped in a cycle of despair. Rachel, piecing together the diary's entries and the local legends, realized that the curse was tied to the cyclical nature of history. The lake, a silent witness to the village's demise, held the key to breaking the cycle. Tom, recognizing symbols from the diary in the forest, led them to a hidden shrine, a relic of the village's forgotten past. As they approached the shrine, the air grew colder, the forest quieter. The lake's waters began to churn, and the ghostly figures converged around them. The trio, caught in the grip of the unfolding drama, watched in horror and fascination as the scenes of the village's last night played out before them. In a moment of clarity, Alex, guided by his lost memories, found a way to appease the spirits. He returned a locket he had found by the lake, a locket belonging to one of the villagers, to the shrine. The locket, a symbol of the village's lost history, was the key to breaking the curse. As the locket was placed on the shrine, the lake calmed, the ghostly figures fading into the morning light. The echoes ceased, leaving behind a profound silence. The curse was lifted, freeing the spirits of the village to find their peace. The trio left the forest, their minds heavy with the weight of their experience. Alex, his thirst for adventure tempered by his encounter with the unknown, was more cautious in his pursuits. Rachel, her curiosity satisfied, had a newfound respect for the stories of the past. Tom, his connection to the lake and its history deepened, became a guardian of its secrets. Echoes of the Forest was a reminder of the cyclical nature of history and the cost of curiosity. It was a tale of three friends who faced the echoes of the past and found their own place in the story of the haunted lake. The forest, with its whispering trees and still waters, held on to its secrets, ready to reveal them to the next curious soul brave enough to listen. The shadows prey. In a remote, dense part of the forest, where the darkness felt heavier and more suffocating than anywhere else, three campers set out to explore its secrets. Mike, a no-nonsense ranger, was there to ensure safety. Sophie, an urban explorer, sought the thrill of new discoveries. Dan, a local folklore expert, was drawn by the legends that whispered through the trees. As they ventured deeper, the forest seemed to change. The light dimmed, as if the sun itself was wary of this place. The trees stood tall and menacing, their branches twisting into eerie shapes. Mike, ever vigilant, noticed an unnatural stillness, a silence that was almost deafening. Dan began to share the legend of the forest, a tale of a sinister shadow entity that was said to stalk those who dared to venture too deep. It was a story passed down through generations, dismissed as folklore by most. But here, in the thick of the forest, the legend felt all too real. The first sign that something was amiss came at dusk. Sophie saw it first, a fleeting shadow that moved against the natural order, quick and silent. It was unlike any animal she knew. Mike, skeptical, suggested it was just a trick of the light. But Dan's face turned pale. He knew the stories better than anyone, they were being hunted. The night turned into a terrifying game of cat and mouse. The shadow darted around them, never fully revealing itself, but always there, lurking on the periphery of their vision. Its movements were predatory, toying with them, a reminder that they were not the hunters, but the prey. In a desperate search for answers, the trio stumbled upon a hidden burial ground, the final resting place of those who had once revered the forest. Among the ancient stones and faded markings, they found a cursed relic, an amulet that was said to be connected to the shadow entity. Dan, his knowledge of the legends guiding them, explained that the amulet was believed to control the shadow, to either summon or banish it. It was a dangerous object, one that had brought misfortune to those who possessed it. The legend stated that the shadow was a guardian of the forest, a manifestation of nature's wrath against those who disrespected its sanctity. Sophie, driven by a mix of fear and fascination, took the amulet, hoping to use it to protect them. But the shadow's attacks grew more aggressive, as if enraged by their discovery. In a heart-stopping moment, Sophie was separated from the group, the shadow looming over her, its form more terrifying than anything she could have imagined. Mike and Dan, their own fears set aside, rushed to find her. In the darkness of the forest, every sound was amplified, every shadow a potential threat. They found Sophie, her back against a tree, the amulet clutched tightly in her hand. The shadow circled them, a predator savoring its victory. In a moment of clarity, Sophie realized the amulet was not a weapon, but a symbol of respect. With trembling hands, she placed it on the ground, a gesture of peace, an acknowledgement of the forest's power. The shadow paused, its form flickering, as if confused by the act. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the moment stretching into eternity. Then, slowly, the shadow receded, disappearing into the trees, leaving behind a chilling silence. The darkness lifted slightly, as if the forest itself had relaxed its grip. The trio made their way out of the forest, the experience forever etched in their minds. Sophie, her thrill-seeking nature tempered by respect for the unknown, kept the memory of the shadow's haunting presence. Mike, his practical mind challenged by the inexplicable, found a new appreciation for the legends he once dismissed. And Dan, his knowledge validated, became even more dedicated to preserving the stories of the past. The shadow's prey was a tale of terror and respect, a reminder of the primal fear of being hunted and the price of disrespecting nature. The forest, with its dark secrets and ancient legends, continued to stand as a silent guardian, its shadow entity ever watchful, ready to protect its domain from those who dared to tread too lightly on its sacred ground. Beneath the canopy, in a secluded part of the forest, where ancient trees towered like silent giants and the air hummed with the secrets of ages, 3 adventurers embarked on a journey that would blur the lines between the known and the unknown. Laura, a keen botanist with a love for exotic plants, led the expedition. Ethan, a documentary filmmaker, was there to capture the unexplored beauty of this hidden forest. Holly, a survival expert, ensured their safety in the wild. As they ventured deeper, the forest's canopy thickened, allowing only slivers of light to penetrate. The air grew dense, filled with the musky scent of damp earth and ancient wood. Laura was fascinated by the unique flora, plants she had never seen in any textbook. Ethan's camera whirred quietly, capturing the eerie beauty of the forest. It was Laura who first noticed the peculiarities of the vegetation. A certain vine seemed to move of its own accord, retracting slightly when she reached out to it. She dismissed it as a trick of the light, but Holly was not so sure. The forest felt alive, watching, listening. Their sense of unease grew when they discovered a peculiar plant. Its leaves were a deep, iridescent green, and it seemed to pulsate gently. Laura, intrigued, noted that the plant emitted a faint, almost imperceptible humming sound. As they observed, it became apparent that the plant reacted to their emotions, swaying more vigorously when they expressed fear or surprise. The forest soon revealed its true nature. Vines began to snake across their path, turning the forest into a maze. Holly's survival skills were put to the test as they tried to navigate the ever-shifting landscape. The more they panicked, the more aggressive the plants became, as if feeding on their fear. Ethan, who had always found comfort behind the lens of his camera, started to act strangely. He had inhaled a spore from one of the plants, and it was affecting him. His demeanor changed, becoming more detached, as if he was seeing the world through a different lens. His transformation was subtle but alarming, his eyes glossing over with a plant-like sheen. The situation escalated when they found themselves trapped by a thicket of sentient vines. The vines formed a barrier, their thorns sharp and menacing. Laura realized that the plants were not just passive inhabitants of the forest, they were its guardians, protectors of a secret hidden beneath the canopy. As night fell, the forest took on a sinister character. Shadows played tricks on their eyes, and the sounds of the forest seemed to whisper secrets in a language they could not understand. Ethan, under the influence of the spore, began to communicate with the plants, his words a mix of coherent sentences and incomprehensible murmurs. Laura, using her botanical knowledge, found a way to appease the plants. She created a concoction from certain herbs that seemed to calm the aggressive flora. The vines retracted, opening a path for them. It was their only chance to escape. But the heart of the forest had one more secret to reveal. In a clearing, illuminated by the soft glow of bioluminescent fungi, lay the remains of an ancient tree, its roots twisted into intricate patterns. Laura understood then that this tree was the source, the heart of the forest's consciousness. Ethan, now almost a part of the forest, refused to leave. He had become an envoy of the woods, his human self fading away. Laura and Holly, torn between the desire to save their friend and the instinct for self-preservation, made the difficult decision to leave, promising to return for Ethan. Beneath the canopy was a tale of wonder and horror, a reminder of the untamed power of nature. Laura and Holly emerged from the forest changed, their respect for the natural world deepened. The forest, with its ancient trees and sentient plants, continued to thrive, a hidden world where the line between flora and fauna was forever blurred. Ethan's fate remained a mystery, a haunting reminder of the forest's enigmatic power. The documentary he had set out to make was never finished, but the footage he captured told a story more profound and unsettling than any he could have imagined. The forest, with its eerie beauty and dark secrets, stood as a testament to the mysteries that lay hidden beneath the canopy, waiting for the next curious soul to discover them. The Lost Camper. In a shadowy, infamous part of the woods, where whispers of past disappearances hung heavy in the air, a determined trio embarked on a search that would blur the lines between the known and the unknown. Nora, carrying the weight of her brother's mysterious disappearance in these very woods, was driven by a mix of grief and hope. Ian, a seasoned detective, approached the case with skepticism but an open mind. Ava, a psychic medium, was their bridge to the unseen world, a guide to the secrets the forest held. The spot was notorious among locals. Campers had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only questions and fear. The forest, dense and imposing, seemed to swallow up any hope of uncovering its mysteries. But for Nora, this was where she hoped to find answers about her brother, to finally understand what had happened to him. Their journey began at the campsite where Nora's brother had last been seen. Ava, closing her eyes and reaching out to the spirits, felt a surge of energy, a whisper of something otherworldly. She spoke of a presence in the forest, a lingering sadness that clung to the trees. Ian, ever the skeptic, watched Ava's process with a critical eye. He believed in evidence, in things he could see and touch. Yet, as they delved deeper into the forest, even he couldn't ignore the feeling that they were not alone, that the woods were watching them, hiding their secrets in the shadows. Nora was haunted by vivid dreams, visions of her brother calling out to her. In these dreams, he spoke of a hidden cave system, a place where the answers lay buried. Guided by these nocturnal whispers, the trio discovered an entrance to the caves, concealed by dense undergrowth and years of secrecy. The caves were a labyrinth of dark, twisting tunnels, the walls echoing with the faint sounds of the past. Ava felt the presence more strongly here, the spirits of the forest leading them deeper into the heart of the mystery. As they navigated the caves, Ian's skepticism was challenged by the unexplainable events that unfolded. Shadows moved of their own accord, whispering voices filled the air, and the temperature dropped without reason. The detective, trained to trust in logic, found himself questioning everything he had ever believed. The pivotal moment came when they found an old locket, half buried in the cave floor. Nora recognized it instantly. It was her brother's. As Ava held the locket, she was overcome with visions. She saw Nora's brother, lost and afraid, his fate intertwined with the mysterious energies of the forest. The spirits spoke through Ava, revealing a tale of sorrow and regret. Nora's brother had stumbled upon the caves, unknowingly disturbing a resting place of ancient spirits. His disappearance was not an accident but a result of the forest claiming what it believed was rightfully its own. The truth was a heavy burden. Nora grappled with the realization that her brother was gone, taken by forces beyond their understanding. Ian, faced with the undeniable reality of the supernatural, found his worldview forever altered. But the forest was not done with them. As they prepared to leave, the spirit of Nora's brother appeared, a fleeting image in the shadows of the cave. He spoke no words, but his message was clear. He was at peace, and it was time for Nora to let go. The return journey was a quiet one. Nora, though grieving, felt a sense of closure. She had found her answers, not the ones she had hoped for, but enough to start the process of healing. Ian, his detective's mind filled with questions, knew that some cases were beyond the realm of conventional solutions. Ava, her connection to the otherworld strengthened, was reminded of the delicate balance between life and the afterlife. The Lost Camper was a tale of loss, mystery, and the acceptance of the unknown. It was a reminder that some places hold secrets too deep for the living to understand, and that closure comes not always from finding those we've lost, but from understanding their journey. The forest, with its hidden caves and whispering spirits, continued to be a place of mystery, a reminder of the thin veil that separates our world from the one that lies just beyond our sight. Campfire Tales. In a tranquil clearing of the woods, surrounded by the gentle sounds of nature, 3 friends gathered around a crackling campfire. Sam, a gifted storyteller with a flair for the dramatic, had brought along a mysterious old book filled with tales of horror and the supernatural. Grace, a horror enthusiast with a love for all things eerie, was eager to hear Sam's stories. Pete, always the rational thinker, was there more for the company than the spooky tales. As the night grew darker and the fire cast dancing shadows among the trees, Sam opened the old book and began to weave a tale of a creature that lurked in the shadows, preying on those who dared to wander the woods at night. Grace listened with fascination, her imagination ignited by the vivid descriptions. Pete, although skeptical, couldn't help but be drawn into the story. But as the night progressed, a sense of foreboding settled over the group. The woods seemed to respond to Sam's tales, the sounds of the night growing eerier with each story. The lines between Sam's stories and their reality began to blur in unsettling ways. It started with small, unexplained occurrences, a rustling in the bushes, a fleeting shadow that seemed to move against the wind. Grace, her mind filled with the horror stories, felt a thrill of fear mixed with excitement. Pete, ever logical, dismissed these occurrences as the natural sounds of the forest. The turning point came when a creature from one of Sam's stories seemed to step out of the pages of the book and into their reality. It was a shadowy figure, just like the one Sam had described, its eyes glowing in the dark, its presence malevolent. Grace's excitement turned to genuine fear, the thrill of horror stories paling in comparison to the terror of facing a real monster. Sam, realizing that his stories were somehow coming to life, felt a surge of panic. The old book, a family heirloom he had thought harmless, seemed to pulsate with an unseen energy. He tried to close it, to end the stories, but the book resisted, its pages flipping as if driven by an invisible force. Pete's skepticism crumbled in the face of the undeniable. He struggled to rationalize what was happening, his mind racing for a logical explanation. But the creature from the story was real, its intentions clearly hostile. Grace, her knowledge of horror stories suddenly a valuable asset, took charge. She remembered a detail from the story, the creature's aversion to light. Urging her friends to stay close to the fire, she frantically searched the camp for anything that could be used as a weapon or a source of light. The creature circled the campfire, its form shifting and elusive, a nightmare come to life. Sam, clutching the old book, realized that the stories were reflecting their deepest fears, his fear of the unknown, Grace's fascination with horror turning against her, and Pete's denial of anything beyond logic. In a moment of desperation, Sam threw the book into the fire. The creature let out a piercing scream as the flames consumed the pages, its form flickering and then vanishing into the night. The forest fell silent, the oppressive feeling of terror lifting like a dark fog. The trio sat in stunned silence, the remains of the book smoldering in the fire. They were safe, but the experience had changed them. Sam, his belief in the power of stories deepened, vowed to be more careful with his words and tales. Grace, her love for horror undiminished, gained a new respect for the fine line between fiction and reality. Pete, his skepticism challenged, acknowledged that some things in the world defied logical explanation. Campfire Tales was a reminder of the power of stories and the thin veil between imagination and reality. The forest, with its ancient trees and hidden secrets, continued to be a place of wonder and mystery, a reminder that sometimes, the stories we tell can take on a life of their own. The Watcher in the Woods. In a secluded campsite, encircled by towering trees that seemed to stretch endlessly into the sky, 3 friends set up their haven for the weekend. Carla, a wildlife photographer with an eye for the unseen, was ready to capture the forest's hidden beauty. Adrian, known for his conspiracy theories, was keen on proving his latest hypothesis about celestial phenomena. And Lucy, a scientist with a skeptical mind, was there to debunk any myths and enjoy the tranquility of nature. As they settled in, a sense of unease began to creep over the campsite. The trees, with their gnarled branches and whispering leaves, seemed to watch their every move, casting long shadows that danced in the flickering light of the campfire. Carla, through her camera lens, first noticed something unsettling, pairs of glowing eyes that seemed to watch them from the darkness, disappearing when looked at directly. Adrian, ever the believer in the unknown, shared his theory that they were being watched by entities from another dimension, beings that observed humanity, hidden just beyond the veil of our perception. Lucy rolled her eyes, attributing the eyes to nocturnal animals and the overactive imaginations of her friends. As the night deepened, unexplained symbols appeared around the campsite, circles intertwined with strange glyphs that none of them recognized. Adrian's excitement grew. These symbols matched those in the conspiracy forums he frequented, said to be markers of otherworldly observation. Their skepticism was further challenged when Adrian set up his telescope, not to stargaze, but to observe the forest. Through the lens, the trees appeared different, their branches forming patterns that resembled neural networks, pulsating with an eerie energy. Carla captured these images, her fascination growing with each click of the shutter. Lucy, determined to find a rational explanation, examined the symbols in the photographs. Her scientific mind struggled to rationalize the occurrences. It wasn't until she peered through the telescope that her skepticism began to waver. The forest, through the lens, appeared alive, conscious, and watching them. The climax of their eerie experience came on the second night. As they sat around the campfire, the sensation of being watched grew overwhelming. The forest seemed to close in on them, the air charged with a palpable tension. Suddenly, the trees swayed in unison, though there was no wind, and a low hum filled the air, vibrating through their bodies. From the shadows emerged an entity, its form incomprehensible to the human eye, shifting and changing, a mass of shadows and light. Adrian stood frozen in awe, his theories paling in comparison to the reality before them. Carla attempted to photograph the entity, but her camera malfunctioned, unable to capture its form. Lucy, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear, stepped forward to confront the entity. She spoke to it, asking what it wanted, why it watched them. The entity responded not with words but with a flood of images directly into their minds, visions of the universe, of civilizations rising and falling, of the Earth as a mere speck in the grand cosmos. The message was clear: humanity was not the center of the universe, but just another part of an unimaginably vast cosmic tapestry. The entity, a watcher, observed and recorded, indifferent to human fears and aspirations. With the breaking of dawn, the entity vanished, and the forest returned to normal. The symbols around the campsite faded as if they had never been. The trio packed up in silence, each lost in thought about the encounter. The watcher in the woods left Carla with a sense of awe at the mysteries of the universe, her photographs the only proof of their experience. Adrian, his conspiracy theories validated in the most terrifying way, was left questioning the reality of everything he believed. And Lucy, her skepticism shattered, was humbled by the realization of humanity's insignificance in the cosmic scale. The forest, with its towering trees and hidden watchers, remained a place of mystery and awe, a reminder that there are things in the universe beyond human understanding, observing us from the shadows. Nightfall Symphony. Deep in the heart of a forest, where night seemed to fall quicker than anywhere else, a team of 3 set up their equipment. Vanessa, a musician with a fascination for natural sounds, Julian, a sound engineer always in search of the perfect frequency, and Rebecca, a nature sound recordist, had come to capture the unique symphony of the forest after dusk. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the light dimmed, and a hush fell over the forest, as if it was holding its breath. Vanessa felt a shiver run down her spine. This place had an eerie, otherworldly feel. Julian was captivated by the acoustics, the way sounds seemed to travel in the dense air. Rebecca, with her keen ear for the subtle whispers of nature, sensed an undercurrent of something more, a melody that seemed just out of reach. As night enveloped the forest, they began their recording. The sounds of the forest at night were mesmerizing, the rustling of leaves, the distant call of nocturnal creatures, and the gentle whisper of the wind. But as they listened back to the recordings, they discovered something unexpected, a haunting melody, an arrangement of sounds that seemed too deliberate, too intentional to be a mere coincidence. Vanessa was drawn to this melody, feeling an irresistible urge to compose a piece based on it. As she played, the melody seemed to resonate with the forest, creating an echo that vibrated through the trees. Julian, obsessed with capturing this unique frequency, adjusted his equipment, pushing it to its limits. But the deeper they delved into the melody, the more things started to unravel. Strange occurrences began to happen, shadows that moved just beyond the reach of their lights, sounds that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once, and an unsettling feeling that they were not alone. One night, as they listened to the recordings, they heard something that chilled them to the bone, a voice, whispering in an unknown language, hidden beneath the layers of forest sounds. Julian, fixated on the frequency, became distant, his behavior erratic. He would wander off into the forest, returning hours later with no recollection of where he had been. Rebecca, growing increasingly worried, began to analyze the recordings, searching for clues. She discovered a pattern to the sounds, a rhythm that seemed to mirror the natural cycles of the forest. It was as if the forest itself was communicating through these sounds, sending a message that they were yet to understand. One evening, as Vanessa played her composition, the melody seemed to awaken something in the forest. The air grew colder, and the sounds of the night intensified. It was then that they noticed one of their own was missing. Julian had vanished, his equipment left behind, still recording. Panicked, Vanessa and Rebecca searched for him, their calls echoing through the trees. As they ventured deeper, they realized the melody was changing, becoming darker, more discordant. It was no longer just a symphony of the forest, it was something else, something alive and aware. In the heart of the forest, they found Julian. He was standing in a clearing, surrounded by a circle of ancient stones, his eyes vacant. As Vanessa approached him, the melody reached a crescendo, the sound so powerful it was almost physical. Rebecca, through her recordings, understood what was happening. The melody was not just a sound, it was a key, unlocking something ancient and powerful in the forest. They had disturbed a delicate balance, and now they were paying the price. With quick thinking, Vanessa played a new melody, one that she hoped would appease whatever they had awakened. The forest responded, the air vibrating with energy. Slowly, the melody subsided, and Julian came back to himself, confused and frightened. They left the forest that night, shaken and humbled by their experience. Nightfall Symphony was a reminder of the power of sound and the unseen forces that exist in the dark corners of the world. The recordings were never released, the team agreeing that some things were better left undisturbed. The forest remained, its secrets hidden beneath the canopy, its melody a whisper in the wind, a reminder of the night when the music played a tune of ancient and unfathomable power.